Hey guys, Mitch Bit here. I'm just going to take some time out of my day to review an old NES game called IronSword. Now, many people might mark this as a bad game because of how difficult it is, and, well, true that it is difficult. I still find it to be a pretty fun and entertaining game, so I'll go into a brief introduction about the game's background. IronSword was developed by a UK-based company called Zippo Games for Rare. It was published by Acclaim and released in North America in December 1989. It was the second installment to the Wizard and Warriors trilogy for the Nintendo. Note the funny cover art with a picture of Fabio. IronSword was fairly well received upon its release, selling 500,000 copies in North America and 50,000 copies in Europe. It was praised for its size, graphics and sound, and gameplay. Although back then, IronSword was criticized for its lack of originality as compared to the other NES games that were released at the time. Alright, enough about the history. Let's pop this sucker in and have a look. So the storyline goes like this. You are Kyros, the greatest warrior of all. Since defeating the evil wizard Malkiel, your renown has spread far and wide. Today you are summoned to the land of Sindarian, a once great kingdom where Malkiel has taken the shape of 4 evil elementals. Wind, water, earth, fire. Each infernal elemental must first be vanquished in his own domain before the final conflict. To succeed, assemble the 4 pieces of the shattered Iron Sword. Seek help from the 4 animal kings. This is your toughest challenge yet. And it's only just begun. So now that that's clear, this goofy character here is Kyros. There isn't much to him, but he gets some upgrades along the way, found through chests and at the shop. There are many chests in each level that can be opened with keys. You can find keys scattered across the level, or by buying them from the shop. Jewels are what are used for currency, and they are also scattered across each level. You have both a health bar and a magic bar. When you take damage, you can recover your health from food placed in multiple places across the stage, or from the shop. Magic can be found either by killing enemies or jumping in random secret spots. You can't use magic until you've gotten the spell that's required for defeating the bosses for each stage, so don't worry about that yet. After playing this game many times before, I can tell you right now that attacking is useless. Even with weapon upgrades, it only improves your range and damage by a small amount. Your only chance is if you can perform a very precise jump into enemies as an attack, or just to avoid them completely. I'd recommend avoiding enemies altogether and just trying to make it to the end of the stage as quickly as possible. If you're in an area where you're caught standing still for a short period of time, you'll be bombarded with enemies. Part of the reason why this game is so difficult is because the enemies are never ending. They have such a quick respawn rate that it distracts you from your task at hand. Many of the enemies are programmed to attack you directly from off screen, so a lot of them are unavoidable. If you're a newcomer, the first level will be the one that makes or breaks you. Most people would just explore the level and maybe stumble upon the end of the stage, only to find out that you need a key item to continue. Each key item is hidden or placed in devious spots of each level, making them laborious to obtain. After you collect the key item and make it to the Animal King blocking your passage, you'll continue to the second part of the stage. For the first stage, you're looking for a golden egg. There are usually 2 different ways to collect the key items in the game, and even a third way later on. The first way is the longest and probably the most conventional method. There are keys spread throughout the level which are used to open chests. The chests contain either weapon and armor upgrades, treasures, or spells. Some of these spells are meant to help you to gather the key items. For the first level, you can find that spell called Familiar at the top right corner of the stage. Use the spell once you're in a close enough distance from the golden egg, and some crazy happy face just fetches the egg for you. Familiar is also helpful for killing random enemies and turning them into treasure, which is useful for when you make it to a shop. The second method is much quicker and relies on precision jumping. Once you've gotten used to the game mechanics, it becomes much easier to get the item with accurate jumping. The third method I'll get into later. After all that work, you finally got the key item only to find out that you're low on health. Well, if you'd been collecting jewels and treasure along the way, then have no fear. Just take a trip to the shop near the beginning of the level. Here you can trade in treasure for certain items that the shop has to offer. Each shop along the way will update their inventory with different stuff, but for the most part they usually have food and keys. If you don't like wasting time looking for treasure, then you can gamble some of that money away in the shop minigame. You have a 1 in 4 chance of winning, so if you win you get a substantial gain, but you're more likely to waste your earnings away. Head over to the Animal King to deliver the golden egg, and the bird will take you to the second stage of the level. This area has a nice new atmosphere with enemies that are equally annoying as the last. Once again, to any new players that don't have any proper instructions are left wandering to every area of the stage. Let's say you make it to the boss room before you're supposed to. Well, that would be the absolute worst case scenario. Because you didn't collect the spell you need to defeat the boss, all the attacks are insanely powerful and can kill you as little as one hit. At least the game has the decency to give you the option to leave the room after you've entered it. Now I hope you've been practicing your precision jumping, because getting the spell involves you jumping across 3 tedious platforms. Not to mention the annoying flying enemies moving back and forth. Once you've grabbed the spell, it's time to stock up on magic. This can be one of the more frustrating parts of the game, especially if you don't know where to find magic. Enemies don't drop magic too often, so you're forced to go hopping around to random spots hoping you land on a secret position that spawns it. After a while, you start to learn where the general spots are. It's usually one platform sticking out from higher up. The same goes for secret rooms. Now you're ready to go to the boss room and kick some ass. The bosses are pretty easy once you have the spell, so for once the game gives you a break. After you beat the boss, it takes you to another room where you collect a piece of the IronSword, and then it sends you to the next level. Well, that was hard enough. Now you only have to do that 3 more times, not including the last level where you have to face the final boss. As heartless as this game can be, it throws you a bone once in a while. The game has free lives usually placed in hidden areas and food scattered everywhere. Treasure is also very common, so it gives you the freedom to stock up on health and supplies for whenever you make it to a shop. Throughout the game, you may come across certain items that are completely useless. All of the Sundarian pieces serve no other purpose than to give you points, and they are usually placed past deadly thwomp-like creatures. Let's face it, nobody cares about points anymore, so I'd rather not risk a game over in exchange for a higher score. Some of the other spells can be helpful, but they don't last very long, and you can only use them a couple times, so in the end, many of them aren't very useful. This game is completely full of glitches. Most of the glitches are bad, but some are good. After you beat a boss in any level, it'll take you to a room with an IronSword piece. Move close to the door and fire magic at the piece of the IronSword. It will pick up the item and allow you to enter the new level with all your magic and let you keep your spell you had from the previous stage. That can be useful for killing enemies and picking up items that are far away. It's especially useful for picking up those annoying key items that are usually out of reach. You can even use the spell to kill the next boss, but remember, since you didn't collect the intended spell that's supposed to be used against the boss, their attacks will be super strong. If you beat the second boss using the previous spell, you'll get caught in a strange glitchy loop that sends you flying back and forth. The collision detection in this game is terrible. It is so bad that the game gets you killed most of the time. Many games let you be invulnerable for a short period of time after you've taken damage, but not in IronSword. Enemies can repeatedly attack you if you're caught in a bad position and will destroy your health bar. They can even kill you again after you respawn, so needless to say this game is completely unforgiving. The continue system for this game works very poorly. The farther in the game you are, the lower the amount of continues you have, but the closer to the beginning of the game you are, the larger the amount of continues you have. That seems backwards, because the farther you make it in the game, the more difficult it gets, so it would be nice to have extra continues for later on in the game, but instead you just get a game over. If you get a game over and want to continue, the game has a code in the menu screen. You can enter the code in the beginning of the game and it will take you back to the level you died at. But if you forget to write down the code before you die, you're stuck playing in the beginning of the game all over again. Wait! No! I meant to press select, not start! Ah! The code should be placed in the game over screen so you don't forget to write it down. But it doesn't matter, because the code isn't much help anyways. If you want to continue the game using the code, you'll spawn in the same stage with all your power-ups and spells, but you only have one life. It doesn't start you off with any money either, so you can't even buy food or keys for when you need to. You are better off starting the game all over again and stocking up on free lives and magic so that you have a better shot at beating the last boss. Oh, and by the way, the last boss will kick your ass if you're not ready for him. You have to kill 4 stupid flying heads that represent each element you beat in the past and hope to God you have enough magic to get the job done. The boss patterns are so obscure here that you're just firing your spell all over the place. Once they hit you, they usually launch you halfway across the screen, and your general reaction is to try and recover from it. But that sometimes will make it worse. They'll hit you in a certain direction that they're moving, and then they continuously do damage to you. Try coming in here with only 1 life. Good luck. Jesus, they're relentless.
Sick of getting beaten to death? Well, I know I am. For times like these, just bust out the old game genie and cheat your way to the end. Now I should mention that you can already use the in-game cheat codes done through the continue screen, and it'll start you off with extra lives and upgrades. But if you're going to cheat, why not go all out? Hell, you can even chain them together to make you even more invincible. I use the Game Genie for the Infinite Lives code, and the code that lets you gain full energy after consuming supplements. It'll stack on top of my checkpoint code, which will start me off with all my power-ups and spells. Code-tastic! Even though I can't possibly lose, the final boss is still giving me a tough time. I can't even count how many times I've died already. There's no way I could have stocked up on that many lives and managed to make it to the final boss. At least not anytime soon. So I finally beat his ass, and he turns into a stupid moon phase thing, and then his head explodes. It's kind of epic.
So that's the end of the game. Let's say you prefer to beat IronSword the legit way. I'm sure you'd still have fun goofing around with the Game Genie. I find it pretty funny to have the IronSword in the beginning of the game, but the only problem is you can't make it past the first boss. The Cloud Lady just spits out tornadoes at you and launches you halfway across the screen.
Fine, didn't want to fight you anyways.
Now I know I mainly focused on the negative aspects of the game, but the truth is the game did live up to its reputation for good graphics and excellent music. The characters were well animated and the bosses had a great amount of detail put into them. The music had sort of a catchy loop that made you forget about the beatings you were taking each stage. But the gameplay, that's a different story. There's certain elements of the game that excelled at, like platforming, but even that got a little redundant after a while. If they just fixed the collision detection, the game would have had so much more potential. I mean, not really having an attack is a crucial component the game was missing. Not to mention how unforgiving the bad guys can be. But all in all, I still feel the game's pretty rewarding once you start to make progress in it. There's a certain satisfaction of overcoming those insane obstacles, and as poor as the continue system is, the game still gives you a second chance. The great thing about IronSword nowadays is it costs like next to nothing to buy. It usually comes to $5 or less, which is considerably cheap for even an NES game. I picked mine up for $2, so I guess I got lucky there. Well, anyways, that was just my take on a Medicore NES game, so I hope you enjoyed it, and so long, happy gaming!